Good evening, listeners. My name is Mason Absher, Theater Connections Manager at Minnetrista. I am excited to welcome you to the Minnetrista murder mystery, Foley Afoul. This was originally intended to take place against the backdrop of our Animationland Exhibit as a dinner theater. So I invite you to grab a TV dinner or other entree and park yourself here for a little while. Is your food delicious, hot, and ready to eat? If not, press pause until it is, because you won't want to miss a moment. Otherwise, listen on. Tonight's story is brought to you by the Ball Jar, perfect for all of your canning needs. The tried and true name that's been preserving food for nearly a century and a half. Ball. Can it all and have a ball with the Ball Jar. Now, without further ado, we present to you Foley Afoul. Our story begins at the 100th annual meeting of the Foley Artists, Vocal Recordists, and Animators Association meeting, or FAVRA for short. Every year, these brilliant artists gather together to exchange ideas, discuss developments in audio recording or animation, and of course, to show off their accomplishments from the previous year. The FAVRA president and convention organizer is none other than Chuck Montana III, the current CEO of the illustrious Sahara, Montana Animation Studio. Word on the street is that Chuck has acquired an animation from the 1920s. It is believed to be one of the earliest works from his grandfather, studio founder Chuck Montana Sr., and studio co-founder Joey Sahara. This animation was previously thought to be lost forever. This year's event is being held at the illustrious Minnetrista in Muncie, Indiana. The guests are enjoying delicious appetizers and beginning to take their seats in the screening room, also known as the Indiana Room. A hush falls over the room as Chuck Montana III steps up to the podium to address the crowd. He is a tall, stylish, eccentric cowboy type. "Good evening, my friends, my colleagues, my fellow artists," Chuck greets the crowd. "We are here this evening to celebrate 100 years of FAVRA. When my granddaddy started this organization, this is exactly what he envisioned. The finest in the profession, gathering together to exchange ideas. Tonight, we honor my grandfather's legacy, along with that of his best friend Joey Sahara. This animation was discovered and donated by a Sahara, Montana board member and friend of our family, Windsor Dudley VII. The film canister is dated 1917. However, it was found in a strongbox along with some fine whiskey and a note dated July of 1927 from my grandfather stating that he was storing these for later, what with the prohibition and all. Now, we'll hear from Mr. Dudley a little later, but first, allow me to introduce the first Sahara, Montana production, Fred the Cat Goes Fishing, presented for the first time ever with live sound effects and voice acting by Prime Rib Fernet and Mal Blanc. Chuck steps away from the podium, and the room goes to complete black. The video screen lowers, and the bright beam of the projector pierces the darkness of the room. Standing next to the screen, but barely visible, are legendary voice actress Mallory, Mal Blanc, and seasoned Foley artist Terrence, Prime Rib Fernet. The grainy countdown begins, and the screen comes alive with the long-sought-after classic, Fred the Cat Goes Fishing. Mal is in excellent voice this evening, providing the iconic, gravelly voice to the iconic, disgruntled cat. Fred packs his jalopy with all of his fishing supplies and is clearly looking forward to a little peace and quiet all by his lonesome on the lake. Little does he know that his rascally canine roommate, Marty the dog, is stowing away for this trip. The vehicle's engine is brought to life by the ever-so-talented Terrence Prime Rib Fernet. This iconic Foley artist operates his sound effect array with the fluidity and musicality of a seasoned orchestra conductor. Fred brings the vehicle to a gentle stop right next to the fishing lake. He exits the car and appears to say something, but his voice is nowhere to be heard. The lights have been turned on in the room all of a sudden, and Mal is nowhere to be seen. Unrest breaks out amongst the guests. But Chuck Montana steps up to the microphone to address the crowd. "Now settle down, everyone. There is nothing to worry about. It just seems the appetizers and cocktails didn't quite agree with my good friend Mal. She's lying down, and our medical professionals are checking her out. But I'm sure she'll be very fine very soon. So let's all head upstairs for dinner, and then Mal will join us a little later when she's feeling better. The guests mosey up the stairs and take their seats at the dinner table. Each table is assigned a different iconic cartoon character. A little fun for the Animator Association. Everyone settles down. Everyone has a beverage. And then Chuck greets them once again. Hello again, friends. I hope you are enjoying your beverages, and dinner is just about to make its way out of the kitchen. While we dine, I am very excited to introduce to you Windsor Dudley VII to tell the story of how he found the lost animation. Windsor Dudley makes his way to the podium. He is medium height with a slight frame. He wears a plaid suit that somehow looks to be both straight out of the 70s and the height of current fashion. Jolly good to be here, friends, Dudley greets everyone. I was clearing my house for a spring garage sale, and I found the strongbox in a closet. He's a very nervous individual. But all of a sudden, Dudley was interrupted by Chuck Montana with a stunning statement. My friends, I have shocking news. It seems that Mal Blanc... I don't know how to say this. It seems that Mal Blanc, the iconic voiceover actress, is dead. A gasp amongst the crowd. Everyone was shocked and murmuring amongst themselves. And then finally enter Kate Screwdriver, a no-nonsense detective who has been sent from the local police department to investigate the murder. All right, everyone. As you know, unfortunately, Mal Blanc is dead. We found a suicide note among her things, but our initial investigation leads us to believe that this is, in fact, a murder. I've gathered a list of suspects, and I will be conducting interviews. Now, before I begin interviews, I must paint the picture of the events leading up to the possible homicide. Mal arrived on scene approximately 30 minutes prior to the guests arriving. She only spoke with two people, Prime Rib Fernet, her partner, and Chuck Montana III, her boss. From what I understand, she was served a special bruschetta appetizer by the chef and a small glass of whiskey from the strongbox as a gift of appreciation from Chuck Montana. We also have a typed suicide note, which is peculiar. It was found in Mal's pocket, and it read, I was excited to return this to its rightful place, but I knew I'd never make it to desert. Desert? Chuck questioned. We're in the middle of Indiana and there are no deserts here. Why, surely that was a misspelling. She must have meant dessert, since this is a banquet. Clearly an unfortunate situation, but these things do happen. We must continue our dinner party in her memory, a celebration of life. Yes, unfortunate indeed. Quite possibly nothing. However, we make it a point to leave no stone unturned when there's any inkling of suspicion. Just a routine investigation and questions with a few of the guests. I'm sure it'll all check out. Right, Mr. Montana? You have nothing to hide. Oh, yes, please. Question any of our guests. Ask any questions you'd like. Nothing to hide here. We would love to cooperate. Oh, and call me Chuck. Not even my grandfather went by Mr. Montana. All right, Chuck. I'm going to start with her partner, Prime Rib Fernet. But you don't wander off. I'll have some questions for you, too. Kate made her way down the stairs to the Indiana room, where Prime Rib was still sitting, all alone. His festive checkered pants and patterned suspenders reinforced his reputation as a bit of a fun-loving oddball. But the absence of light and joy in his eyes revealed that this was a man who not only lost a colleague, but a part of himself, or had done something terrible. I'm sorry for your loss, Kate said. We think there was a possibility of foul play in Mal's death. I'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's all right. Go right ahead, said Prime Rib. Could you walk me through your arrival and events leading up to the murder? Sure. We drove in together. We always did that, especially for live gigs. It gave us one last chance to work out any timing issues or trouble spots in our routine. Who drove, you or her? She always drove. If there was a sound effect that was giving me trouble, I could work on it. There's a lot of muscle memory involved in this stuff, so being able to just go through the motions was helpful. That all makes sense. Now walk me through what happened when you arrived. After we parked, we walked into the Indiana room, where Chuck was waiting for us. We tested the projector and our sound, and ran through probably the first 30 seconds or so of the animation. We'd run it flawlessly multiple times per day over the last week or so at our studio, so we didn't feel the need to run the whole thing. After that, we walked into this little sort of coat closet hallway that they had converted into a hospitality suite of sorts for us. Did Chuck go in there with you? Was the bruschetta and whiskey waiting for you? Chuck followed us in, and then either the chef or a member of the catering staff came by with the tray. I couldn't tell who it was because we were sitting down and they were sort of around the corner. When Chuck came into the room, the tray had 3 glasses of whiskey and a plate of bruschetta. Then what happened? Did you drink the whiskey? Did you eat the bruschetta? Chuck offered both of us the whiskey and told us the story of where it and the animation had come from, which we had already heard verbatim no less than 5 times. I've known Chuck for years, I like working for him, but I swear that man loves the sound of his own voice. So Chuck drank the whiskey too. I was starting to wonder if that was what had been poisoned. He did. In fact, he finished it while we were sitting there, actually. I can't really eat or drink anything other than water before I perform. However, I really like to have something ready for me when I come off stage. Was Mal the same way? Not exactly. See, she likes to sip. I guess I should say she liked to sip a little bit and have 1 or 2 bites of something, like a bruschetta. Just a little carbo kick, she used to call it. I miss her. I can tell. This has been very helpful. Just one more thing to clear up. Oftentimes in murder cases, we find that an angry spouse or a jilted lover was the perpetrator. I saw that Mal had an engagement ring on, and I did a little asking. I understand her wedding was supposed to be next week. The two of you obviously have spent a lot of time together, were very familiar with one another. Any romance between the two of you? Oh, detective, if I had a nickel for every time someone asked if there was any romance between the two of us over the years, I could buy Sahara, Montana in cash. Sure, we talked about it. We met in college almost 15 years ago. We did date briefly for a month or two. It was probably about 10 years ago, maybe 12. It wasn't good for either of us. We were much better as friends and colleagues. I actually introduced her to her fiancé, Wayne. He's been my accountant for years, and I thought they'd hit it off. Conversely, she introduced me to my wife, Heather. But you're not wearing a wedding ring. Heather passed away after a long illness about 2 years ago. It was devastating. Wayne and Mal were my support system. To lose her too, it's just awful. Yes, I'm sorry to hear that. And Wayne, where is he? Is he here? No, he's at an accounting conference. 'Tis conference season, after all. I wouldn't know. I've never gone to a detectives conference. I don't like taking time away from work. Oh, I see. Thank you so much, Prime Rib. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't wander off. I may have more questions for you. Kate concluded her questioning session with the Foley artist, Terence Prime Rib Fernet. Kate returned to the banquet area, where it almost seemed like things were completely business as usual. Networking, dining, and merriment were all well underway. Such short memories they have, Kate muttered to herself. Since Prime Rib had confirmed that Chuck was with them nearly the whole time, and had provided the whiskey, the next logical step was to interview the animation tycoon himself. "Ah, detective, back so soon?" Chuck smiled up from the head table. "Ready to question me?" "Indeed," Kate said. "Could we go somewhere a little quieter to chat?" "Of course, I've got just the spot." Chuck excused himself from the table and the two walked into one of the galleries that had been converted into a kitchen and prep area for the evening. Since dinner was served, but not yet ready to be cleared, the space was fairly empty and quiet, aside from one or two servers eyeing beverage glasses from afar, and the executive chef preparing dessert on the opposite side of the room. The rest of the staff had stepped out for a quick breath of fresh air. "Now, what did you want to ask me?" Chuck inquired. "From what I understand, you and Prime Rib were the last two to see Mal before her unfortunate demise. I'd like to hear your version of events after Prime Rib and Mal arrived here this evening." "Well, they came to the Indiana room and I welcomed them. We checked the technical elements for the animation. After that, we went to the hospitality suite. I had asked for some of the whiskey from the strongbox and the bruschetta. I wanted to make sure they heard the story of where the animation and the whiskey were found, and how glad I was to have them back in our possession. I may have told them once or twice. I love that Prime Rib Fernet, but I swear he doesn't listen when I talk, so I had to repeat myself. We chatted, I finished my whiskey, and then we went on about our business. I didn't want to bother them too much since they were getting ready to perform. Where did you go after the hospitality suite?" "I went out to the lobby to start welcoming folks, and then I made my way into the Indiana room for opening remarks. I hope you know, Mal meant a lot to me. I recruited her and Prime Rib right out of college because I knew they had the energy and the mindset to propel Sahara, Montana into the 21st century. I miss Mal. It's been hard tonight. In some ways, I feel like I lost a daughter, but I've got to keep up appearances. There are a lot of people counting on me to keep this thing going. Any further questions, Detective?" "Not at this time, but don't go too far. I may have more later." "Detective, I planned this event, and it has now turned into a celebration of life for my very dear friend. I wouldn't be much of a host if I left it now, would I? Good luck, Detective." Chuck left the room, and Kate began to ponder. Motive and opportunity. Chuck and Prime Rib both had the opportunity, but not a strong enough motive for murder. What was she missing? All of a sudden, Kate's cell phone began to ring, and she answered. "Go for Kate." "We have some news," said the voice on the other line. It was the crime lab. "Let's hear it." "It turns out you were right. The drink was poisoned." "I knew it." "Only one of the drinks was poisoned, though. The others were just fine. However, what is interesting about this poison is that it was some sort of fast-acting, denatured alcoholic compound. At a glance, it was made to look like poisonous alcohol that was available during the Prohibition era. However, this compound is far more potent and fast-acting. Whoever did this wanted it to look like it was just some sort of horrible accident, a mistake for Prohibition-era alcohol that was still poison. Seems puzzling why they'd only poison the one drink, though. That just seems to arouse more suspicion. I hope this helps, Kate. Good luck out there." "Thanks, Matt. Let me know if anything else comes up." Kate hung up the phone, still further puzzled. It still didn't make sense. If Prime Rib or Chuck had done it, this would set the target right on their backs. Neither of them would be that careless. Who could have had access to the drinks to poison them? "Excuse me," a voice said. Kate wheeled around. Who are you?" "I'm Patty Begonia. I'm one of the servers here. I'd like to help with the investigation if I can." "Well, perhaps you can. What would you like to tell me?" "I'm the one who delivered the food and drinks to the hospitality suite." "I see. Did you poison the drinks? Is that what you came here to tell me? Because you're looking a lot like a prime suspect based on what you've already said." No, I didn't poison the drinks, but I know who did. I think it was our chef." "What makes you say that?" "Well, as I was preparing the tray with the bruschetta, I noticed our chef poured something out of a little bottle into one of the drinks. I thought it was strange since we were supposedly serving whiskey on the rocks." "Was it in all the drinks or just the one?" "I only saw the one." "Thank you. You've been extremely helpful. Where's the chef?" "I believe he took some things down to the main kitchen on the first level." "Excellent. I'll see if he needs any help. Don't wander off, though. I'm hoping this investigation will come to a close very soon. I'm here all night. We haven't even made it to dessert." Kate raced down the back stairs of the gallery, and they led right into the main kitchen. Sure enough, there was Chef Thurston Phillips. Why, his arrival was almost as big of news as the Favre conference itself. He opened all of the Sahara, Montana kitchens, from theme parks to cruise ships to mall stands. He opened every single one of them. "A detective screwdriver, I presume," said Thurston Phillips. "Yes, how did you know? I didn't make a sound." "You thought you didn't make a sound. When you've worked in as many nooks and crannies as I have, you quickly pick up the sound of each environment. With the presumed poisoning, I figured you'd be headed my way." "Yes." "Well, I can tell you this. I didn't do it. I was rather fond of Mal Blanc. Satisfied?" "Not quite. I heard you put a little something extra in the drinks. What was that all about? I'd think such finely aged whiskey would be fine with a couple of ice cubes. Also, why would a chef of your caliber be preparing drinks when there's a massive dinner ahead of us?" "First of all, I oversee all food and beverage operations. I am as skilled behind a bar as I am in a kitchen. This must be distinctly understood, or you shall bruise my ego to the point that I shan't be able to help you." "I see. Forgive me, Your Excellency." "That's better." When Chuck is involved, I try to be as close to it as possible. It's beyond impressing the boss at this point. Chuck is like family, and I want him taken care of appropriately. "So why the additives to the drinks?" "First of all, it's not whiskey, it's some sort of Swedish spirit. It was very reminiscent of that abominable beverage they consume in Chicago. What was it? Malarkey? Malaprop? I almost wished it had been denatured alcohol, and it would have killed me. It was awful. Worst thing I've ever tasted. They used to poison alcohol that was still available for cleaning and other purposes during Prohibition. I think I heard that somewhere. How did you know it wasn't poisoned, aside from the fact that you're still here?" "We have some laboratories at our disposal. They checked it for me, said it was fine, or at least safe to consume. Relatively speaking, of course. Dreadful on the palate. Anyway, an old friend of mine had told me about using bitters to make this particular type of liquor somewhat palatable. Chuck kept insisting that it was whiskey, so I tried to make it somewhat palatable, and at least look like whiskey to some extent, with a bit of food coloring, so that he could have the narrative that he needed for his story. He's been known to romanticize bootleggers in the Prohibition era, so I let him have his fun." "And you put bitters in all of the drinks?" "Of course. Did I unwittingly poison my friends with this mixture?" "No. Only one drink came back poison." "Interesting. Well, I'm guessing that Patty Begonia sent you over here. She ran the drinks. Nearly dropped them, but I watched her walk from the kitchen to the suite. There would have been no opportunity for her to slip poison in the drinks." "So I'm still stumped." "Well, that's all I know. You might ask Windsor Dudley. He's the one who found the spirit. Maybe he had it out for Mal. I couldn't tell you why, though." "Thank you for your help, Chef." Kate left the kitchen and stepped into the main lobby, and there was Windsor Dudley, already waiting for her and speaking a mile a minute. Miss Detective, I didn't do it, I swear. Let me give you my full alibi. I discovered the strongbox when I was cleaning out my father's house for a yard sale. I know what you're thinking. With wealth as extensive as the Dudleys, why would you need a yard sale? I like yard sales. I always have. I wanted to go to them growing up, but my father said no. So now I have them and go to them as often as I can. You meet some great people and discover some really neat treasures. I gave Chuck the strongbox as soon as I knew what it was. My great grandfather or something. I'm not sure how many greats. He was 1,000 years old even then. Windsor Dudley III, yeah, that relative of mine, yes. He provided the initial investment for Sahara, Montana studios in the early 1900s, or whenever it was, and we've been on the board ever since. Well, I did keep a copy of the note from the strongbox, and I think you might find it interesting. Kate's eyes grew wide as she read the first part of the note. "Gather everyone back into the banquet hall," she said. "It's time to solve a murder." With timing that would make an old vaudeville comedian jealous, Kate managed to gather everyone back into the upstairs banquet hall for dessert and a big reveal. Everyone, I have determined that Mal Blanc was indeed murdered, and I intend to make an arrest. The crowd gasped. Our investigators have shown that one of the drinks in the hospitality suite was poisoned with a special form of denatured alcohol designed to rapidly kill whoever consumed it. I've investigated and determined that there is only one person who had motive and opportunity, and that was the server, Patty Begonia. Or should I say, Patty Sahara. The crowd gasped again. Why, I don't... All right, it was me. I am Patty Sahara, but how did you know, Detective? Windsor Dudley shared a copy of the note from the strongbox with me. In it, Chuck Montana talks about how someday he hopes that Joey Sahara's children could be restored to be a part of the studio's business. Up until this day, it was believed that Joey had no heirs or children. As such, Joey's share of the studio went to the Montana family. The note goes on to say that Joey Sahara fathered a child in secret with Windsor Dudley III's much younger wife. Dudley knew about the affair, but everyone feared that the studio could not weather such a scandal. Everyone saw that the child was provided for, but Joey Sahara Jr. could never know his true heritage. His name was changed to Joey Begonia, and he did fairly well for himself as a chemist, and was none the wiser. Windsor Dudley VII discovered some files and letters and pictures while preparing for one of his famous yard sales, and a search began. Windsor had hoped to bring her here and have her assume the Sahara family's place on the board of directors, but Chuck was doing everything he could to delay this process until it was absolutely certain Patty was Joey's heir. It seems Patty got tired of waiting and took matters into her own hands. Why did you do it, Patty? My family has had to live in secret for over 100 years. I wanted to be back in my family's rightful place, and I wanted it right now. I knew that if I poisoned one drink, it would make the other two look suspicious. Either way, it would create an opportunity for a Sahara family member to provide stability to the company. I sympathize with you, Patty, but unfortunately, an innocent person got killed. Where did you get the poison? Well, you said yourself, my grandfather was a chemist. Let's just say he taught the family a thing or two. Kate cuffs Patty and escorts her out of the banquet hall. The end. Once again, I'm Mason Absher. Thank you so much for listening to Foley Afoul. What do you think happens next? I hope maybe this will inspire you to try writing your own murder mystery, or share whatever story you've got on your mind. Thanks again, and have a pleasant evening.